Hey everybody, this is Tomas Soto. It's the 26th of September 2017, and today I'm going to show you the deadlift progression. For those of you who don't know what the deadlift looks like, I'm going to go ahead and give a quick demonstration. So now that you know what the deadlift looks like, hopefully it'll make sense as we go through each progression. So let's get started. So the deadlift can be considered one of the three big lifts. You have your bench press, the squat, and then the deadlift. It can also be considered a total body movement just based on the muscles that we're using. Starting from the bottom, you have your calves and the soleus, your adductors, your quads. A lot of the workload takes place in the hamstrings, your glutes. You definitely need a strong lower back, so the erector spinae, and that core to help keep everything tight. As you're doing your lift, you need to be able to keep a tight upper back, so having strong lats, your shoulders and your traps, and definitely your forearm for the grip strength as far as holding the bar up in that position. So one of the ways that we're going to prepare for the deadlift is work on our hinge. Now the hinge is basically a bending at the waist, keeping our back straight. It's essentially a hinge of the waist. It requires spinal and pelvic stability as well as hip mobility and some hamstring flexibility. Now one of the first mobility exercises to help with hinging are called Frankensteins. Now as you're bringing your leg up, you're keeping your other heel flat on the ground, keeping your knee locked out, and you should kick as high as you can. I don't have a whole lot of flexibility in my hamstrings or hips, so my range of motion is a little limited. So go until you can feel that stretch, and you'll want to go for about 20 reps. All right. The next mobility progression that we have are called inchworms. So you'll basically bend and hinge at the waist, go down and feel that tightness in your hamstrings to the floor. And you'll walk yourself out until you're basically in a plank position. Bring your toes in until you feel that stretch, and then walk it out. And then bring your toes in. Again, working on that hinging motion and stretching the hamstrings. You'll want to do about 10 inchworms. Okay, so the last mobility exercise that I'm going to work with you on is basically a lunge with a twist. So do a nice lunge, keep your back knee off the ground, and an easy twist. Back up, other leg, easy twist. And you'll want to do 20 reps of these. Really firing up your quads, opening up your hips, and getting your body warm and prepared for that deadlift exercise. Okay, so we've worked on some of the mobility exercises, focusing on some of that hinge work and stretching of the hamstrings just to get us prepared. Now there's obviously a huge variation of other exercises that we could have done. Those were three that I thought worked really well and focused on for you guys. So now that we've primed our muscles for performance, we can move on to the next steps, the progression. Now after reading and watching others teach the deadlift, I noticed a method of going from top down for these progressions. And that basically means that you're starting from kind of a motor learning from the standing position. That means that you're learning to keep a neutral spine for your lifts, and then you're challenging it from that deadlift position rather than creating it if you go straight into the deadlift without any of that training, without allowing those neurons to have made those connections. So instead of going straight into it, having a rounded back, not knowing how to keep your hip hinged and the angle of your spine at a certain position, we'll start from the top so you know how to keep that straight. Then we'll work down to the hip hinge, finally using those hamstring and lower leg muscles. So the first step in our progression is going to be the unloaded isolation, which will be the body weight single leg Romanian deadlift. This is what it looks like. You'll keep your shoulders back, a nice neutral spine, stand on one leg, a slight bend in the knee, and you'll just go down until you feel a good stretch in your hamstrings. Down and up, nice and slow. So what it works on, obviously standing on one leg, is coordination and balance, right? Working on the knee and the hip while still allowing your hamstring to handle that workload, okay? And this is allowing our brain to speak to our hips and our lower leg muscles, and it creates a motor pattern movement that we can use in the deadlift later. You'll want to do about 10 reps per side. Okay, so moving on with our progressions, we're moving from the unloaded isolation into a loaded isolation. Now this is with dumbbells, and instead of doing a single leg, we'll do double leg Romanian deadlift. The goal of this is very similar to the single legged Romanian deadlift, and so here's an example of what it looks like. You have your dumbbells, you want your feet close together, and then it's that slight bend in the knees again. You want shoulders back, and you'll just bend forward, really pushing your butt out until you feel that stretch in your hamstrings, and then nice and up. You want to keep your heels planted on the ground, a nice hinge at your hips, and again, pushing that butt out until you feel the stretch, and up. And you'll want to perform, a few 3 sets of 10 with these until you feel comfortable, and you can move up on the weights. So the last progression that I'm going to show you moves right along from unloaded isolation to loaded isolation into what we're about to do, the loaded compound variable. We'll practice this with the dumbbell sumo deadlift. Now the point of this is to really practice on tensing the hamstrings with that external load. And the other thing that makes this great is it gives us a center of gravity that's closer to the body versus the conventional deadlift. So it allows us the practice and progression to be a little bit easier. So the way we start, pick up our deadlifts. Now we'll have a nice wide base with toes pointed out, okay? Dumbbells are gonna be going down the middle and not the outside. And you'll go down. Now you'll start with your butt first, right? Working on that hinge, pointing your knees out and going down, and then just coming right back up, nice and easy. From the side, pushing the butt out, and then coming up together. Now you don't want to start just with the hinge and then go down, or butt up and then back. You want butt out as you go down, all one fluid movement, and then all back up together. So that is the sumo deadlift with dumbbells, and that's the last progression that I've got for you. So now that we've worked through a few of the progressions to the conventional deadlift, I'm going to show you it one more time. In this way now, hopefully you'll be able to notice some of the things that we worked on. Keeping our shoulders back, working on that hip hinge, keeping the body and the core tight as we're pulling all together. So here it is one more time. So hopefully you were able to see a little bit of all that combination together. So now the goal is to practice those progressions that I showed you and work really on getting perfect form, feeling comfortable, and just really building the strength in your muscles, the mobility, and making those connections from your neurons to your body. Once you do feel comfortable with that and you are able to move on to the conventional deadlift, it is important to start light and slowly build up the weight. So some extra exercises you can do once you feel comfortable in the deadlift area are some lat pull downs. That'll help engage your latissimus muscle, really focus on your upper back. You can do some cable rows, dumbbell, or even barbell rows, again to focus on your upper back muscles, allowing you to keep your shoulders back nice and tight while you're performing the deadlift. There are also good mornings to help with your lower back and build strength there, or even weighted bridges to help with that hinge while you're performing your deadlift. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you very much.